In any normal people's career, even though you're investing as much as you can, whenever you can, you are limited by how much you make at the time. Most people's career starts with them earning quite little. Even though I'm investing as much as I can when I was earning $7,000, I can only invest $4,000. The ideal approach is to choose a portfolio with the optimal risk-adjusted return for you that you're comfortable with, and then add leverage.
What's your cost of leverage? Welcome back to Chills with TFC. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and today, following a great success with the turtle, we have successfully welcomed a lion in the studio. So I'm very happy to be in studio with FIREPath Lion to talk about his story from 0 to 4 million in 10 years, But yes, for our audience that don't quite know you yet, can you introduce yourself?
My name is FIREPath Lion, and I am a blogger who blogs at a blog of the same name. And on the blog, I share in detail my journey, all of the numbers towards my financial independence. And by being pseudonymous, it allows me to share all the nitty-gritty details and all of the numbers, including my income, all of my bonuses, and all of the investments that I do, as well as my portfolio, the details of my portfolio and the numbers. That's what I share on my blog and also on Reddit under the same username. All of the information around my current journey towards my FIRE number.
And I think we went pretty viral because we did some coverage on what you were doing, right? And that's when I told the producer, let's get the guy on. And then my producer was like, but he said he wants to come in a lion suit. so that's what you are gonna get, like, okay, enjoy. But to take you seriously, maybe for the audience that for some reason have not read the blog, maybe we can talk a little bit about how you got started. Like what got you into FIRE? Just lay the ground for everyone.
It's an interesting story because after I graduated in 2009 and started work for 2 years in the banking industry, after that, I actually had a dream to start my own business. And I was raised in a household that believes in starting a business. To be successful, you need to have a successful business. When I was working after 2 years, I had some money saved up, and I kind of had the opportunity to reflect a little bit on starting my own company. And I felt that even though it was risky, it would be more and more difficult over time to take a leap to start a business. So after 2 years working at a bank, I dumped out and took a risk to start my own company. And I basically spent about 4 or 5 years building that company. It was a mobile app company. And unfortunately, after 5 years, it didn't do well, right? And I had to close down the startup.
Yeah.
And during that time, I think there was a lot of moments where I regretted. I felt that I completely screwed up my financial life, right? I had no income. The business wasn't going well. I lie awake at night thinking about whether I've completely screwed up my future. After I successfully managed to get back into the workforce, I had made up my mind that I would not put myself in that financial situation again, right? I still like to make things or build things, but at the same time, I feel like if my financial foundation wasn't strong, I couldn't really build a company while still, or like build things while still worrying about whether that thing is going to make money or not. I'm a builder or a creator, but I don't necessarily want to always worry about whether that thing that I'm wanting to make and I'm passionate about will make money or not, right? So I set a objective at the time to never be put in that position again and build out a stronger financial foundation. And that was around the same time where I also discovered the FIRE movement. And before the FIRE movement, for me, I felt retirement was very ambiguous or like a very unclear goal because I don't know how to think about how much I actually need and how can I actually invest money to get there, right? The investment before discovering FIRE movement and the Bogleheads passive investing, to me was something that you needed a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise, a lot of time spent researching and trying to understand the market, trying to pick the right stocks, find the right Forex play or do an options play, find the right commodities to buy at the right time. And to me, it felt like something that was out of reach for me. And it felt like you needed a lot of expertise to even successfully pull it off. But FIRE movement and the Bogleheads passive investing showed me a very different way, right? So it allows me to understand how much I actually need in order to retire, right? The 4% rule was a very good rule of thumb, and most of you probably have already heard it. And on the other hand, I don't need to be an expert on any of the stocks that I'm buying, right? I'm not buying individual stocks. I don't need to know what the right time to buy is. I don't need to know what companies to buy. I don't need to monitor it on a day-to-day basis. I just need to know that I just need to save consistently, invest as much as I can, as aggressively as I can, and over time, the market will give you a return that gets you, once you get to the 4% that you can withdraw to sustain your own annual expenses, you're free. So that was a really powerful and freeing knowledge. So that was when I started aggressively saving and investing into the market. I started blogging about it in 2018 because my wife got so sick of me trying to talk to her about FIRE all the time. She said, if you like to talk about it so much, why don't you just start a blog? Other people will probably find it useful and stop talking to me about it.
So for all you FIRE lost souls, let's do something, right? We'll do a community event, sometime down. I'm working on it. Okay, so you don't need to annoy your wives, your husbands, your partners, your kids. Let's gather. But whatever you said, it's at this point in time, it's like the first principles of FIRE, right? Save aggressively, invest, let it compound and grow, right? So all those things are not wrong. But to go from like broke after 5 years of doing entrepreneurship, 0 to 4 million in 10 years, I think that still has a lot more nuance and insights to it, right? So I would like to kind of like dig a little bit deeper on this, right? Like how do you even land your first job after failing your business for 5 years?
It goes back even further than the startup. After I graduated in 2009, and this is kind of why it really, life only makes sense when you look backwards, because everything clicks into place, right? Because in 2009, I graduated in the depth of the financial crisis. And at the time, and because I was looking for jobs in banking industry, the banks didn't want to hire, right? Because of the financial crisis, all of the budget was cut and a lot of hiring were at risk of being frozen. And that's why I think Singapore government at the time came out with this FGIP program. It's basically financial graduate immersion.
Initiation?
Something like that.
Yeah. It's like the grid of today.
Then it basically matched the hiring. The government would pay for $1,500 of your salary, and the financial institution can top up a minimum of 500, but anything above 500, they are allowed to. So most banks just went with $500. They top up 500. So total salary at the time was $2,000. And I was one of the hires that were hired within the FGIP program.
No wonder you quit after 2 years.
Yeah. After a year, I actually got promoted, or like at least graduated from the program.
Okay, and become a full-time hire.
Got an increase to 4,000 after a year. Essentially, during that 2-year stint before I went to do my startup, I actually worked with a very good boss and were one of the high performers in the team, right? And at the same time, I also met my wife at the bank. And after I folded my startup, essentially my ex-boss moved to another bank to run another team. And he needed someone who he can trust and is able to build, like to work with him and help his team build the next thing his team needs to build. And my wife just also happens to be working there with him, or at least followed him to work there as well. So at the same time, I folded my startup. My ex-boss was looking around for a trustable and reliable team member. And he just basically asked my wife and said, hey, is FPL ready to get back into the workforce? Is he willing to come back and work with him? And basically, I seized that opportunity to say yes. Obviously, right now my startup is failing, and I'm worried about my future. And I think this is aligning very well with what I wanted to do. And I liked working with that boss. It just fell into place. So I accepted the offer and started working again in the banking industry.
Awesome. And are you still in the same team?
No, I've
Okay.
shifted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the later part of the story, right? When you got this other job, like how much was it paying?
When I started back in 2016, it started at $7,000.
Walk me through the numbers, right? How the hell does someone go from $7,000 a month to $4 million in 10 years, right? Like let's take the next few steps, right? So you got a job and then what happened?
At the time, because I was basically a broke startup founder.
And your wife stuck around?
And my wife, at the time, girlfriend, so really appreciate her sticking around.
Shout out to all the
Now
crazy
wife.
girlfriends that stuck around. You're not the first one, many of the others. So shout out to all of you, right?
Exactly. During that time, because I was a broke, even during the startup days, last 1 or 2 years of the startup, I actually, because I'm not actually from Singapore, right? I'm not Singaporean. I went back home to do the startup. So it's bootstrapped, a lot cheaper at home. And when I moved back, essentially, while the startup was failing and I was about to close down the startup, I moved back to Singapore. But I just didn't have any cash to rent a place or anything else like that. My girlfriend actually offered for me to move in with her. So I actually stayed with her and her parents in their house for almost 5-6 years. And during that time, both of us saved a lot of money very aggressively because we didn't have to pay
there was
rent.
no rental arrangement?
Yeah.
You just got to pay utilities?
Exactly. So we
Okay.
helped out. I covered all of the utilities and also helped out with groceries. But they paid off their mortgage. So there was no outgoing for the house that needed to be paid. So then they didn't ask me for rent. Both of us just basically took the opportunity to just save very aggressively. My income was 7,000. I was saving maybe 4 or 5,000 every month. This is not scrimping because like we still can afford to go on trips and vacations while saving quite aggressively.
Where do you go for trips and vacations?
I think during that time, the vacations we also didn't go that often, but we did go to like Korea or like Japan.
Okay, so that means on some level your expenses are held pretty low, right? So that you can kind of then go for these little trips. But from your point of view, you're not scrimping.
Yeah.
Right. So you held a basic quality of life, saving pretty aggressively at 70%.
Yeah.
What were some of the big breaks? Like what were some of the moves? Immediately you started investing?
Yeah. So once I started work and started generating income, I initially just dabbled, right? I heard about index investing. I was reading quite a lot of books that indicated that active investing was going to underperform passive investing. So initially, I wasn't 100% convinced. So when I started, I actually started first I was using Poems, Phillips Capital, the Poems platform at the time, and they had the RSP, automatic saving, monthly
regular
savings.
saving plan.
Yeah. I started actually investing first in STI. But then over time, I think at the beginning, I was only dabbling with $500 a month, then upped it to $1,000 a month. Then after maybe even 6 months, I shifted to investing in IWDA and just become much more aggressive
Why?
at the time. There were some stock picks here and there did work out well, but it was a small amount. Like I think I bought Tesla at the time. It was like maybe less than $100.
Yeah, about that. Why the shift? Why did you go from like STI using RSP in small volume? I mean, it's marginal, right? It's 10% of your surplus.
Exactly.
And how did that then go from like in 6 months, let's do, IWDA, and do the other bigger indexes?
As I read more and more about the basis of passive investing and why it outperforms active, I became a lot more convinced and a believer in the approach. So by, I think, 5-6 months, I was sold on the concept. Actually, it wasn't really a major moment because when I was reading, I think I also discovered Mr. Money Mustache, a pretty big name in the FIRE community. And everyone advocated, at least within the FIRE community, to invest in index funds. And there's a lot of research going to show how well that worked. So after 6 months, I was convinced enough to aggressively started deploying all my cash. Whatever extra cash I had, aside from emergency funds and savings I need for like vacation or anything like that, I just threw it into the market. Aside from that, and there's no major like aha moment. And that's also why it was interesting when I started the blog. It was more framed as, hey, follow along on my journey. Even if it is good and bad, I will share everything, right? All my stumbles, pitfalls, I'm just going to be very transparent. If this doesn't work out, then you would also see. But this could be a good example or a source of inspiration or source of example for you to see that how passive investing works in Singapore. And does it work out for you or it doesn't work out for you? This would be a place where you can see that as a real life example happening.
What are some of these like pitfalls that you were talking about there? I mean, since the whole thing is an experiment, it's probably in the earlier days, it was still pretty much like figuring out and that whole bit, right? Your conviction definitely grew over time. I mean, that's how most people are. What were some like earlier pitfalls and that whole bit, if you could shed some light?
Actually, the core pitfalls always had to do with market timing and trying to stock pick. As I think I mentioned, it's not on the blog now, or like it's not on the blog before at all, is that when I started, I actually started doing some individual stocks. So one is Tesla. I just got lucky a little bit there. I think within a year I sold and I got like maybe double my money, but it was a small portion of the amount I put into Tesla. I think I felt that it was overvalued, so then I sold it. And I think I sold it in like 2017, 2018 or something like that, right? If I had actually held that, it would have been much, much more today, right? I might have been
0 to 4
retired.
million in 5 years, not 10 years.
The other part is that whenever I always advocate for lump sum, and lump sum always does better on average compared to DCA. And there were situations where I knew my bonus was coming. Let's say my bonus was in 2020, it would be paid in March, and the market started tanking from COVID. The market is dropping, and my salary or my bonus, a huge amount of money is coming soon.
How huge?
At the time, the bonus would be about $70,000.
Pretty good, yeah.
So I was like, oh man, there's about 70K coming, and the market's dropping now. So I actually started at the time investing earlier, like I think using my emergency funds to deploy funds earlier as the market was dropping. And I caught the market as it was going down, which was decent, is good. Overall, until now, it's done well, right? Doesn't matter where I got in. But had I just waited until the bonus actually lands, I would have been able to catch the bottom, almost the bottom, with the full bonus, right? Rather than averaging in over time. But that's kind of the luck of the draw. Sometimes you time well and sometimes you don't. In the grand scheme of things now, it doesn't really matter how much that was. And it was be like a minuscule amount compared to the total portfolio that it is now anyway.
So for 70,000 bonus, like how much were you drawing annually at that point in time? So this was
This was
3-4 years into the job, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So 4 years, yeah. So I started in 2016, and the first year, because like at the end of 2016, the increment's not big because I just joined, half the year maybe. So it was like up to like 7,050 or something like that.
Marginal.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very small. But by at the end of 2019, going into 2020, I just got a mid-year promotion because I was doing very well. I was one of the high performers. So they bumped. At the time, I was earning 8,000. Maybe early in 2019, I was earning 8,000. In August or September, they bumped me up to 10,000. So 10,000 at the end of 2019 to 2020, and at the cycle, in the early cycle of 2020, they bumped it again to 12,200. So it went up like 20-30% in just within a span of a few months.
Broadly speaking, your expenses held the same.
Yeah, at the time the expenses were very low.
But now it's different.
Yes.
Now you have
Yes.
lifestyle inflated. You're an
Yes.
expensive lion now.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, it's fine. Don't worry. You're free. No
That's
judgment.
actually one of the learnings.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the Financial Coconut Podcast Network. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut. And if you're loving what we're creating here, like, share, subscribe, share with your loved ones, comment in the comment section below. And yeah, we'll see you for great content on Chills with TFC. But you know, all these things still doesn't quite add up in terms of the numbers, right? Like okay, 7, 8, 10, 12, that's kind of like monthly salary, include your bonus. There must be some other things, which I think you've talked a little bit on the blog, right? So can we also discuss like your property strategy and then stay tuned. The last one is the interesting one. Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the property cycle that you were on?
Property is an interesting one. This is also kind of serendipitous. Like most people, when in early career, I can't afford my own property either. And I blogged about this a little bit as well. There's one article, you can go and read it. But essentially, at one point, because I wasn't from Singapore, my dad actually came to visit. And this is, I think, I've not shared this before. So this is fresh new on
Exclusive on the Financial Coconut.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my father flew in and then came for a visit. And he just happens to see a newspaper ad about a new property being launched. And he just wants to go down and see, right? So he went to see and then ended up wanting to buy that property. So it was like a 2-bedroom private condo. So he felt he's a big property investor. So he wanted to buy the property, and I was like, at the time, I have no clue about investing. I have no background in real estate. And I was like, okay. And he basically bought that property, but using my name, right? In a way. So I purchased that using my name. Basically, it belonged to my dad. What I ended up doing was he didn't give that to me, right? So it wasn't just like, oh, because now you deserve an inheritance early and he just gave that to me. No. So eventually what happened was, because he doesn't live here, family history wise, he would buy investment properties but never manage them. And then a lot of the properties get quite run down, right? Because no one stays there, it's not being used, it's not renovated, and it just basically decays. At some point, he needed cash. He needed cash back in our home country. So I said, okay, look, instead of you holding on to this property, why not I slowly, essentially pay you for the property? And over time, as I was working, part of the savings that didn't go into the market also went back to paying him on a monthly basis and slowly buying back the property from him.
At his entry price or at the market transaction price?
It's based on I gave him a bit of interest on top of that.
Okay.
But it was lower than the market price.
Okay, so you're a junk bond, essentially.
Yeah. Basically, he bought a property and I basically gave him cash flow until I fully purchased the property back from him. Now, you may think that is a good deal, but when I back calculated, had I not had this property, right? If I had not had this property, and instead I've only was able to start paying him for the property after I worked, right? Started working 2016, so it only started from there. Everything else before that was paid by him, right? Had I actually invested the money instead of buying the property from him, had I actually invested in the stock market, we would have netted about the same amount of money, because basically instead of paying him, I would have been investing instead into the global market. And after calculating all of that, it would have been neck and neck.
So essentially, that is you trying to break a fallacy. That property investing is not necessarily better.
Yes. And I personally believe, even though I've made quite a bit of money off of that property, when we sold that house, luckily or unluckily, after COVID, there is the property started
There was a big
shooting
boom.
up. Right?
Yeah.
There was a big property spike. Of course, we sold that one, and then now we have to buy our current place. So then the current place also got more expensive when we were buying it. So net, I think both property had increased in value. So when we sold, we made quite a bit of money on that. It's about $500,000-$600,000 net gain. And then I immediately inject that back into the market as well. But as I said, if we had actually invested that amount instead over the years, we would have netted about the same amount.
Which area was that property in?
It's in the Bedok area.
Bedok. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you guys can go and back calculate lah. So in other words, what you're saying is, although you had this like little side quest with property, it's really not that important from your point of view in building to your portfolio.
Yeah, I think the key was that I would actually prefer stocks, because stocks is a lot more liquid. I can sell partial, like let's say I bought stocks for $1 million and I need 50,000. I can actually sell $50,000 worth of stocks, but I can't sell 50,000 worth of property. Like you can't.
I want to sell my balcony. Anybody?
Yeah. So it's a lot more liquid for stocks, and the stocks you're owning, if you're buying index funds, you're owning thousands and thousands of companies. So you're very much more diversified. If your $1 million is in one property, then you're counting on that one property doing well. And there's a lot of influencing factors in whether a property will be a good property or not, that some of it you can't control, but also you are now counting on just that one property versus thousands and thousands of companies trying to do well.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? I think ultimately, to be able to go from 0 to 4 in 10 years, which you wrote about, right? So if you read his blog, you will see it. Actually, a big part probably is leverage, right? Of course, on top of the market, you kind of wrote a cycle and all that bit, right? But can you kind of profess a little bit? Tell us what do you do, from a leverage standpoint?
Backstory, I started leveraging in, I believe, was 2021. This was when I first discovered, logically, if we can get a cost of borrowing low enough and we can invest in the market for, let's say, average 7-8% real return, and your real interest rate is, let's say, 1% or 2%, then you would make that difference in the margin, right? And I want to say this, preface this to everyone, and I think every time I mention leverage, I always want to put a disclaimer.
This is not financial advice.
This is not financial advice, but and I also do not recommend leverage for most people, because it amplifies, yes, it will amplify the upside. It also amplifies the downside. And a lot of investing is emotional. The more you are leveraged, the more emotional you would tend to be, because the market changes move your portfolio a lot. And if you are not at the right frame of mind, it's very easy for you to exit your position at the worst time, right? And it's probably the only way an index investor, a passive index investor, can get wiped out, right? As an index investor, you will never get wiped out unless the whole world has been destroyed. But if you have leverage, it's possible that you get margin called and all of your portfolio is gone, right? So you have to be very, very careful. And I don't think everyone has the right sentiment, or a large population has the right sentiment to leverage. A lot of the population also doesn't have the right sentiment to even hold index funds without leverage, right? So I think just want to preface that.
So disclaimer aside, this is not financial advice. How do you do it? Tell us your thought process, and that whole bit.
I really started leveraging in earnest once I read this book that is written by two Yale finance professors called Life Cycle Investing. And the core premise is that one, it is stocks have a positive return over time. And the longer you hold stocks, the more likelihood of positive returns there is. So therefore, you want to be as much exposed to stocks for as long as possible. The longer you're exposed to stocks, the safer it is and the more returns you get, right? So that is quite standard, even for normal passive investing. So that's why you want to invest early, invest often, and invest for a long time, right? And keep holding on your stocks until you really need the money, then you sell. They take this and basically look at how much the people are able to invest. So in any normal people's career, you are actually investing, even though you're investing as much as you can, whenever you can, you are limited by how much you make at the time. So most people's career starts with them earning quite little. So even though I'm investing as much as I can when I was earning $7,000, I can only invest $4,000 a month, let's say. But once my career takes off and I'm getting promoted and I'm shoveling as much as I can into the stock market, I'm investing maybe $10,000 a month. So most of the investors' money gets invested into the market in an increasing basis over time. So the older I am, or the more longer I'm in my career, I'm able to invest more. So what happens is that you're actually investing more later in life than you would earlier in life. But in an ideal scenario, because you want to be as exposed to stocks as early as possible, you actually would want to have more of the tail end of your career investment actually pulled forward, right? You want to bring as much of the money from the future and invest right now, rather than starting to invest a lot more.
Yep.
Right? So they showed in the book that this is where leverage comes in. If you are able to borrow money for a reasonable cost, so cost of borrowing is very important. You want to keep the cost of borrowing low. And if you can get it low enough, you should borrow up to twice your asset, so 2 times your money, and invest as early as possible. So young people should be borrowing money to invest as early as possible. And as you age, you reduce your leverage over time as you're getting closer to the time when you are retiring. So essentially, you're pulling forward your future income into the present to expose your money, more money, as much money as possible to the market for as long as possible. So when I read about that, it made a lot of sense. And a lot of data, they did a lot of back testing to show that, one, it either increases your return for the same amount of risk, or if you want to keep the returns the same, you are actually lowering the risk of your total portfolio over time. So you can choose whether you want to have higher return for the same amount of risk, or you can keep the same amount of return but lower your risk, right? So the ideal approach is to choose a portfolio with the optimal risk-adjusted return for you that you're comfortable with, and then add leverage. And that's what I started practicing. The book recommended 2x leverage, but with 2x leverage, with the facilities that I use, if the portfolio dropped by maybe 30, 40%, you would already be margin called, right? You would already get margin called. But essentially, I want to keep my crash buffer at much lower than that. So I set a target this is for mainly what I'm comfortable with. I believe that the market will be very, very unlikely for the market to go down 50%. So my target is when I invest with leverage, I want to maintain my crash buffer to 50% or more, right?
Mm.
And by doing that with a mixture of both the direct lending that I get, which is the collateralized, essentially borrowing on my stocks, and personal loans. I also utilize personal loans at slightly higher interest, but because personal loans are not collateralized, they can't be margin called, right? So by doing so, I'm able to get to 1.5x leverage instead of 2x, but maintain a crash buffer of 50%. So the market can go down by 50% and my portfolio will still not be margin called. And over time, if the market is dropping, I can also, if I can keep my job and continue making high cash flow, high income, I can also continue to slowly buy down the leverage or add more to the portfolio to increase the crash buffer. So to me, that's how I manage the risk so that I'm quite comfortable with the level of crash buffer that I have. And I'm quite comfortable with keeping risk on over the longer period.
Can I know what is your weighted average cost of capital? Like, what's your cost of leverage?
The cost of leverage, depending on what currency I'm borrowing,
Mm.
currently I can get 2% on Singapore dollars. And if it was in Swiss francs, which I used Swiss francs for quite a while, like up until this year, it was 0.85%.
Nice.
So it's very, very low. And if you're, of course, if you're borrowing in a different currency, you are
Take
exposed
FX
to
risk.
FX risk, which actually dampened the return last year, right? When US dollars started dropping and then Swiss francs actually started increasing by quite a lot against USD. So my returns are still positive on the loan, but it's not as high as if, let's say, I was using Japanese yen.
Although it's not financial advice, but I think that's a very good, clear frame of thought, around leveraging, on what most people will call like a passive strategy, right?
Yeah.
But does that make you actually passive then? Like, how much management do you really need to do?
Taking a little bit of a step back also is that there are two ways to increase your returns in your portfolio. Either you add concentration, or like you concentrate your choices rather than increase your return against the market. In order to increase your return against the market, you need to either be more concentrated than the market and pick the right stocks, or add leverage, right? And a lot of people, when they're thinking about increasing returns against the market, they tend to think about concentration because that's more traditional. But if you want higher risk-adjusted return, you want to get as diversified as possible, but then you ramp it up with leverage. Now, as Reggie, you're asking rightly, this strategy means that I'm then not, right? In order to make sure that the portfolio never gets into a dangerous territory of getting margin called, etc., I need to monitor and risk manage the leverage more frequently than if I just buy straight index funds. That one I can just leave it, right? But if because I'm leveraging, I need to monitor making sure that I am comfortable with the risk of margin call that I currently have. Because the buffer is so large, the activity, yes, there is some actively looking at the news and things like that. Definitely more active than passive once you start taking on leverage, but it's not doing trades every day like what people would do with options.
I think that is a very well done explanation, right? But that doesn't mean it's for everyone. We are not professing that this is the way, but I think that is the theory and he has clearly executed it, right? And to your benefit. Have you tried back testing? If you didn't leverage, where would you be today?
I have not really back tested. I think would be probably 500K less or a million less.
Essentially went through the whole journey of how you got here. It's a little heavy, right? But you survived. You did the grind for 10 years, you stuck to the course, you rode a wave, you invested, you leveraged up, everything hit the spot lah, right? So now you're done, right? I mean, have you hit your fire number in that sense?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not
What's your
yet.
fire number?
My personal fire number is 3.6.
Okay.
About 3.7 million.
And then the family's fire number?
Is about 6 to 7.
Okay, so there's still a little bit more to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so does that mean that in the next 10 years, you're still going to be doing this grind?
The numbers and all of the information on my blog is purely my own side of the portfolio and numbers. My wife she's also investing, but I invest for her on her behalf using her own investment account, and I don't share that number, right? So while I'm close to my own FIRE number, once I've hit that, the current plan is still continue to work and then essentially now redirect or at least make sure that all of the total family portfolio hits our family FIRE number. So we are, after all, a team. So one team, one dream. Rather than just hitting my own number and then just say, okay, wife, please continue working and
Yeah,
hit your
hi
own FIRE
team.
number. I will be working until we hit both of our numbers so that we can both have that financial freedom together and then spend the time working on things that we're passionate about.
I think for a lot of people, I hope that today is a good lesson, right? Some good thoughts around how to look at money, how to manage your money, and then the work towards FIRE. So maybe FIREPath Lion, if someone would like to connect, where is the best place to go?
Yeah, you can email me at lion@firepathlion.com, or you can message me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter as well. So with the same handle, you can always reach out through those channels. Reddit is also the same. So I am /FirePath Lion. You can message me there.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Please give him a follow. He's doing very well, very popular. So very candid sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Reggie.
If you love what we are doing here, I hope you had a good time today. Please go to thefinancialcoconut.com to put your email address so that we can reach out to you and route out the algorithm whenever we need to for events, for new launches, and all that fun stuff. So with that, that's all for today's Chills with TFC. We'll see you next week. Meanwhile, take care. Bye-bye.